You're listening to the A Bit From Within podcast with Felicia Marty.
You can either use like what happened to you as woe is me, or you can use it as what does this give me? There's something to be said about like going through something really hard and getting through it and knowing like when something hard comes in the future, like, hey, like I got through all of those things and I didn't think I could, and I did.
Hello there, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me for a new episode of the A Bit From Within podcast. I am so excited to be able to welcome another guest to today's show. Today, I want to introduce you to Kyli Hopkins. On January 30th, 2020, Kyli was starting her day just like any other morning. She was up before the sunrise, preparing for an early morning workout with her friend. And as she was walking through the parking lot, she was struck by a vehicle and rushed by ambulance to the hospital, where she'd have an emergency craniotomy to stop 2 separate brain bleeds. The doctors were able to save her life, removing a piece of her skull to relieve the pressure temporarily so that she could heal. She was in the ICU on a ventilator, fighting for her life. Her family, including her fiancé of 7 months at the time, was by her side, not knowing to what extent the accident and the surgery would have on her. She pulled through that initial fight to wake up and begin a long road towards recovery. She'd have to have a surgery again several months later to have a synthetic brain flap placed back into her skull where the former piece had been. The scar on her head is quite remarkable, starting just above her right ear and forming a half moon towards the back of her head. Every brain injury is unique, and there are no two that will ever be the same, and the same goes for how it affects the humans who live with traumatic brain injuries. Kyli has been working tirelessly every day since then to recover, and she's been doing a remarkable job at it. Even though her accident has shaped every day of her life since, she is so much more than this defining piece of her story. She is a fiancé and soon-to-be wife. She is a wonderful daughter, an amazing friend, an enthusiastic supporter, a lover of coffee, fitness, and ice cream, and the proud owner of her first home. I'm so excited to talk with her today and get to know a bit of what she's been going through, how she's managed it, and what it's taught her. As with all of our episodes, A Bit From Within is about sharing those pieces of truth that may not be able to incorporate the entire story, but for sure have resounding truth that we can all connect to. Before we welcome her on, I'd like to share with you the words she wrote on the first anniversary of her accident. It was a year ago today that I almost lost my life, but it was also a year ago today that I fought for my life. I'd love to say that this was some decision I made out loud or promised to myself, but it wasn't. It was the grace of God, universal prayers, miraculous medical teams, and a subconscious will to fight. The morning of the accident, I was laying on Laurel, my friend, waiting for the ambulance to come. When she got home, she realized that she had blood on her, perfectly placed here over the words, "More life." Even after the hell that this year has been, the pain, the disappointment, and the emotional roller coaster, I'm so glad I'm here today to continue my journey of more life. Let's welcome Kyli. How are you doing today?
Good. How are you?
Good. I'm so excited that we get a chance to talk to you. I know that you've been through a lot in this past almost year and a half.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that there's probably going to be so many things that we could discuss and might discuss and all of these kind of things. But I was wondering if you could fill us in a little bit about who you were and what your life was like before your accident.
Yeah, definitely. So before my accident, I was working for a property management company. I was an assistant manager at a leasing complex. So I was there anywhere from, 40, 50-hour weeks. It was a brand new complex. So very hands-on there, super into fitness and an active lifestyle. I loved going to Orange Theory Fitness. That was one of my favorite outlets for myself. Just recently had gotten engaged to my fiance, Zach. So we were planning a wedding and really just enjoying our engagement. We had just recently moved into our first apartment together. So we were just enjoying spending that quality time, just the two of us. And that was pretty short-lived. The accident was, I think, about 3 weeks after we had moved into the apartment, and it kind of all shifted from there.
Do you feel like this was one of those lightning tower kind of moments in your life where like there was like before the accident and then life after the accident?
Yes, 100%. I feel like not so much anymore, but definitely at the beginning of the, right after the accident, I caught myself saying so many times, I want my old life back, or I just want my life back. You know, I've read a couple of quotes that basically talk about how like the only way to move forward with your new life is to kind of close the chapter of your old life. So that's been probably one of the challenging parts, is just kind of grieving that life of what could have been.
I think that that's true for so many of us, right? Where it's like, we are not the same people as we used to be, but sometimes we hold on to the things from the past. But like for you, you have no choice to be in denial about what has changed for you. How have you managed that over the past year?
I think it's just one of those things that you kind of just have to accept. Like, no matter how much I want to fight what happened, or I want to be angry about what happened or sad about what happened, it's not going to change. I can't go back in time. And I also think that there was a reason that I was like spared my life that day, and it would be a shame and a waste of the life that I was spared to live the rest of it in a angry, sad, resentful place. And so I just think the only way like through it is to just go through the motions and just, do the work. And it's just something that like, I can't change. So all I can change is how I react to it and what I do to move forward. So, people talk about how it's like, you're so strong, you're so brave, you're all these things, but like, when you have no other choice but show up and like survive, like you just do. Like, it's not a conscious effort. Oh, I'm gonna learn to walk to, like, you just do it, and no one else is gonna do it for you. So yeah, I don't know. I think the first 6 months or so, I don't really know that like my emotions were really on. I was just going through the motions, and I was just just showing up every day.
Yeah, that makes sense. You cannot predict what's going to happen to you if you go through something like this. And I love that you're highlighting that and bringing it to the surface. That's one of the reasons I love what you wrote on that day of your anniversary of your accident, is like, it's not like this was a conscious choice to fight for your life. It's not like you were aware of being in an ambulance or aware of any of that. If I remember right, you don't even remember those moments from the time of your accident. Is that right?
Right. Yeah. So the clearest memory that I have was from the night before. I remember like having dinner, remember what we ate, but everything for the morning of, I don't remember driving to the gym. I don't remember walking into the gym. I remember like a very foggy memory of like feeling like I was inside of a like metal box being like moved around. So I think that might have been the ambulance. But really, like, I have no recollection of that morning. The next thing that I remember is waking up on a ventilator and feeling like I was, choking and couldn't breathe, and just terror of like, where am I? How did I end up here? It's kind of like it never happened.
That makes
sense.
That's
hard too, because it's, I'm in this hospital bed, and it's like my family's like, oh, this is what happened to you. And it's like, you're just hoping, you're just taking their word for it, because you don't know.
Right. Do you ever feel like you've had to set any kind of boundaries, even if these aren't things that you actually said to the people that are closest to you, who loved you and supported you through this, but do you ever feel a little bit like that's your truth of what happened to me, and my truth is different?
I don't know that it's so much has been boundaries in the sense of like your truth, my truth. Definitely some boundaries in the sense of like, being my own self advocate and being aware of what I needed in recovery and stuff like that. But I definitely know there's been times when everyone else is affected by this accident, rightfully so. But at the end of the day, like, it's me, and it's like, it affected me personally, I'm the one that's going through all of it. And, one of the things that's really hard, especially with a brain injury, is, normally if something's going wrong in your life or you're having struggles, it's like, maybe if you're just having like problems with your spouse, like, okay, you can take a little break from that. Or maybe you're having, some difficulties at work, you can take a vacation. But when your main problem in life or your main like struggle is your own self, you can never escape it. So, I know to everybody else, like this is a big part of their life, but to me, this is my entire life. And so I think that that's been something that I've had to make very clear, like, hey, I know this is really hard on everybody else. And I know it affects everybody else, but like at the end of the day, I'm the one that had to go through it. I'm the one that has to live with it. I'm the one that's going to be stuck with this forever. So yeah, so that's hard. But in the same sense, I also know that I can't relate to my family and friends, how they feel watching from the outside. So we all just try to be very respectful of where everyone is in their place.
Oh my gosh, it's a beautiful point that you just highlighted, because it is unique on both sides of that. And they're both different, but equally valid, right? Like everybody is valid in this situation because it's big stuff. Yep. I'm curious, one of the things that I wonder about for you, especially now that it's been over a year, but you've been able to be pretty public about everything you've been through. Do you feel like that has helped your progress overall?
I mean, I think so. I definitely think that the more you put out there, the more people are aware of what you're going through, and therefore they can give you the support that you're, wanting or needing. I've always been somebody who's very like open and very transparent. You go through things in life, and those are then used to help you help others. And I think it would be a shame if I went through all of this and then I just never spoke of it. I never brought it up. I never used it to help anybody else. I just feel like it would kind of be all for naught. I've had a couple of people that have come to me and said like, hey, I also suffered from a brain injury, or hey, I also had this or that happen to me. Things that like I never knew they were going through because they weren't maybe as open about it. Just re-solidifies that you really don't know what everyone's going through, especially with something like a brain injury where we, talk about it as an invisible injury. You look at somebody and they look like they're fine. And so I think that that's something where, social media in general can give you the wrong view of something, or people just put the positive out there. And yeah, I want to give the full story, the good, the bad, the ugly. I don't think it would be fair to speak on my injury in either just a positive light or just a negative light, because I just don't think that's real. So it's really important to me to just be myself. And I've had a couple of people be like, oh, we can't believe how honest you are. And it's like, why not be honest? Why not? Like it is what it is. It happened. And again, nothing's going to change it. So my only hope is that with my story, maybe I can help someone else. So yeah, I guess being public about it or being open about it has been helpful. And I think a lot of people have been very supportive, some just from the sidelines. I mean, I've gotten some messages from people who I've never even talked to who were like, hey, I've been following your story for a year now, and I just want to speak out and say like all these things. You kind of like, you don't realize how many people are watching and how many people are rooting for you. So I think that that's really nice to see that and feel supported from, your family and friends, but also like strangers and people who you don't connect to every once in a while. So that was a very long version of that question, but
no, that was perfect. Yeah. And that kind of leads me to a question I've been curious about. When somebody you know and care about is injured, like, of course, there's different degrees to like the inner circle, right? Like when it's your fiance that is hurt, you're going to feel one way. And then when you're in the outer circle, like I remember I'm in your, outer ring of circle. I knew you for like maybe 2 months before this had happened because you had just booked me to be your wedding photographer. And I remember seeing the post happen on Facebook when it had first initially happened to you and just feeling, so scared for you and so like, I cannot believe this happened to somebody that I knew. You don't think it's going to happen to somebody that you're close to. You also don't think it's going to happen to somebody that you're those varying degrees, but it still hits you. And so one of the things that I've been thinking about is, what can I do or say to actually be supportive? So I'm curious, like, from your lived experience, are there things that weren't supportive that people said to you, maybe even in those early days, and then contrast that against what was actually encouraging, what was actually supportive?
Yeah. I think for the most part, people were very supportive. And I think the people who didn't know what to say just chose to say nothing, which I think is a safe route. I think it's one of those things too, where you have to kind of know your audience and know where you sit with that person. You know, I'm very open to things, where some people, like in the healing and grieving process, they maybe want to be like left alone. I think for me, the first couple things that come to mind as far as like things that were not supportive was, you know, I know what you're going through. You don't. If you haven't had a brain injury or you haven't been hit by a car, then you don't. It's fine to say, you know, I can empathize, or I can, you know, I can kind of relate in this sense, or, you know, but to say like, I know what you're going through, that's like a very slippery slope. And even if you do know what I'm going through, like, don't invalidate my feelings and my recovery and my process, you know, because even if we had the exact same thing happen to us, it could be different. And then one of the things was like, you know, I had to have my hair cut. And I think people were trying, and I didn't even realize this was going to be, you know, upsetting to me, I guess, until it had happened a few times. But like, people were trying to be supportive, and I appreciate that. And I recognize that. But by saying like, oh, we love your short hair, or like, oh my God, that short hair is so cute on you, or, oh, we think you can rock it. And like, even though those are very, very sweet compliments, and I do appreciate it, it's still hard because of, yes, I like the short hair, and yes, it's fine and it's cute and whatever, but like, I didn't choose this for myself. It's my choice. So I think that that's one of those things. And I think just hair is such an emotional thing in general. So I think that was another like really kind of hard thing for me. But with that being said, I also think that like, you know, those two things, I, you know, have brought those to people's attention and said, hey, like, this really upsets me, or this really, you know, and people have been aware of that. And they're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize that would be, you know, something that would be hurtful to you or upsetting or anything. So I think they are really just trying their best. And that's part of the reason why I want to be so public, put it out there in the light that it's in. But I had, as very few people that turned me the wrong way. I had way more support than not. I think just honestly, like just a simple, like, I'm pulling for you, or I see you and I appreciate what you're going through, or you're so strong, you know, keep fighting. I think those things, just for people to validate, like, hey, I see what you're going through. I know it's hard for you. I don't know personally, but like, I'm so proud of you and I'm so happy you're still here with us. I think those are all very like supportive things. And I think those are supportive things to say to people in any aspect of their life who, you know, just kind of reach out and they're like, hey, I know I'm not in your inner circle, but I just want you to know, like, I'm watching you from the sidelines, and like, I'm so amazed by your story. Like, keep going. I think those are the supportive things that, you know, I love to hear. You know, because sometimes you think that you're in this by yourself, but it's so nice to know that like you're not. And there's some people who, like, even though all the people who've reached out to me, some people still haven't, and they're just watching and they're just, you know, observing, and just letting people know you're in their court and you're there for them in whatever capacity they need. I think a simple like, hey, I'm here for you, whatever you need, is great, because it might be emotional, it might be physical, it might be like, hey, I just want you to come over and like literally talk to me about anything else but my accident, like anything else.
And I think that's one of the most important things that you can offer to somebody who's going through a lot, is sometimes, while always validating and always like acknowledging what's actually happened, you don't want to be in denial of that to that person. But I do know so many people who are like, when you're in the thick of something that's extremely heavy and really intense, that, like you said, you're living all the time, you cannot escape from. Sometimes having that hour-long conversation with your best friend about all of the drama in their life can be a really nice escape.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I don't always want to be the center of all the attention. And I think that's one of those things too, where it's like, hey, I have other things going on in my life than just this brain injury. Like, I know it's a very big deal. And I know that it's something that like is super traumatic. But like, I'm also getting married. I'm also in the process of buying a new house. I'm also a good friend. I'm also all these things. And I don't want to be discredited for those things and labeled as like Kyli with a brain injury.
Yeah.
So I think sometimes people don't know what to say or how to say it. And they think that being supportive is being there to talk to you about what happened to you. But like, sometimes you don't want to talk about that. Sometimes like that's the last thing you want to talk about because you're living it every single day.
I think that's been one of the best parts about, and why one of the reasons I wanted to have you on today's podcast is because you really have done such an amazing job of showing up as yourself throughout this journey. So like looking back at those first, like I remember your first social media post where you showed the picture of your scar. You were very public about, having half long hair and half short hair on your head. And when you decided to cut it, and that was your kind of your choice, you really didn't have a choice, but it was you deciding when you were ready to make that jump. And then it seemed as though it was like, in those early days, you had no choice but be fully in it. And then it was kind of interesting to see you kind of layer over time, like, okay, now I'm getting back in a car. Like now I'm getting an elliptical for my house. Yes. Now I'm starting to work out again. Yes. I was cleared for this. Yes. I'm getting back into coffee and like how much I love going to and like, you kind of showed everybody what recovery looks like in a year, right? Because it's not just this, one day you wake up and you're better. Talk to us about the injury that you live with, like a traumatic brain injury. Talk to us about what that's like for you personally, because we know every TBI is totally different from anybody else. But what is it like for you to live with that?
Just like you said, every traumatic brain injury, TBI, is different for every person. I had a lot of doctors say one brain injury is one brain injury. So basically, there's not a scale you can go by. It's not like when you break your wrist and it's X amount of time until it's healed. There's really no set deadline, nor is there a set like you'll make a full recovery with brain injuries. So in the first like 1 year is usually when you make the most progress. But I have heard that it can be anywhere up to 5-10 years down the line that I'm still kind of making progress. But for me, the two main things that I still really struggle with is just the cognitive fatigue. So just getting tired quickly. I had no idea how much the brain controls. I mean, literally everything. And you need your brain for so many things, like even things that you think are just basic, like you need your brain to talk, you need your brain to walk, you need your brain to breathe, you need your brain to do all these things for you. And then when you add an injury on top of that, it just it doesn't leave much energy to do other things. And so just getting tired fairly easy. Over time, it has gotten to the point where I can kind of go maybe 4 hours without a break versus before, right after the accident, I was going maybe an hour and then needing a break. So it's definitely getting better, but I'm still dealing with that. And then the other thing is just like I get overstimulated very easily. So if there's multiple things happening at once, I might have a breakdown that looks like either crying or anger. It's just all kind of unpredictable because I'm just kind of at my wit's end. And my brain is just, it feels like it's kind of in like overdrive and it's, not quite functioning. I don't want to say normal level, but at, on a
previous capacity.
Yes, on a previous capacity. And then I think the other thing is, I still struggle with, I have so much further to go to be where I was before. So I think that's like really hard, especially on an emotional level, is like, how do I live my life now and have it resemble the same things it was before the accident, but also knowing that it's going to be different because I now have this accident, and I have this injury. So that's really hard. It's really hard to accept the fact that some things are just going to be different, accepting that and then being okay with it and being able to move forward is challenging for sure.
It makes sense. And I think just the way that you said that, it kind of takes us like full circle back to the beginning of the conversation, where it's like, you have no choice but to accept where you are and just live it. Even if it's a subconscious choice or a conscious choice, like you're just in it, you're living it. And that's almost like happening on like the head level, like the physical level, like it's just happening. But then what you just spoke of is like the part of you that brings your heart into it, right? The part of you that is actually struggling to comprehend the fact that you have to accept it. The part that is more aware of the fact that there is a grieving process, and that even with the grieving process, you don't just burn it and forget about it. And even if you have gotten really good at it, and most days of the week, you're not thinking about it or sad about it, like every once in a while with grief, that one thing can pop up that you're just like, oh, I wish that this was different. I wish I wasn't going through this. Yes. Have you had that? Does that sound right to you from your lived experience?
Yeah, definitely. It's very much a contrast for sure of like, I want my old life back, but also in the same breath, I'm so glad I still have my life. And it's this toggle between, I'm so lucky and I'm so thankful that I survived this, but also being like so pissed that you have to go through it. And so like, why does this happen to me? Or why did this happen to me? Nobody's going to come to me at the end of this and be like, hey, do you want to erase this or do you want to start over? Like, that's not going to be an option. So yes, I feel like my heart is kind of trying to catch up with those things. I think I'm at the point where I've recognized what happened, and I've recognized that things are different and need to be different. And I think now I'm at that point where I'm learning to accept that. But yeah, like you said, with grief, there's always some things that kind of, trigger you. And it's one of those things where, when I have like an outburst, or when I'm overly stimulated, or when I'm like feeling angry, I think about like, what will I look like as a mom? Like, will I be able to control these things when I have children? Like, am I going to be a bad mom because of this? Or what kind of a wife am I going to show up as? And am I going to be, is it going to be something where over time, Zach's going to be like, whoa, this is too much for me. I can't handle this. Like, you kind of start to question yourself because you are the problem, or your injury is what's affecting you. And so it's very hard to not trust yourself. And I think I'm learning to trust myself more, and like trust the recovery process and trust the timing, and know like, I'm getting better in this area or that area. But yeah, it's hard because, you normally can always depend on yourself. With me, like, I feel like myself, like I'm kind of sometimes a little unstable. And so it's hard to know, like, what does the future look like when I'm uncertain about. But yeah, it's definitely a juggling act for sure, between feeling very, very, very thankful and feeling very discouraged sometimes and upset that it happened to me.
I feel like I could almost cry from what you just said, because I feel like I can relate to that so much. Just like this idea of like, the person I'm scared most of is me, like my unpredictability. And I think for you, I mean, it is so valid that it is your injury that is causing that moment in your life. But I do think that that's something that so many of us can relate to just in our go society, like, feeling like things are way faster paced than maybe we are, or that our lives are on a faster track than we are. And so please know that, like, while you have the injury and you're going through that, I think you should always remember you're not alone with that. There's so many of us going through that out there and facing those same fears that like what if the reason that things don't turn out the way that we wanted them to is because of us?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like that's, that's just really huge. And I thank you so much for sharing that, because it's a big thing. I didn't want to just gloss over that because it's so important what you just said. I'm curious, Kyli, what do you love about your new self?
I think kind of feel like I have a simpler life, and I feel like smaller things bring me more joy. You definitely take things for granted always. I think that's just kind of human nature. But I think to have like almost everything, before the accident, and then to have almost nothing after the accident, it really puts it into like perspective, the things that I'm thankful for, but I didn't realize I was thankful for them until I didn't have them. Something as simple as like being able to go to the bathroom by myself, or being able to shower by myself, being able to drive, being able to like enjoy a glass of wine. Like these are the things that like I never thought I would miss. I never thought I'd be appreciative for. So I think like in this newer version of myself, in this newer life that I'm in, like I am just really appreciating more of the simple things in life and the more experiences and people versus things. And every time that you go through something that's traumatic or like a hard season of your life, like I think you're just that much better equipped to be able to deal with hard things that come in the future, but also like you just become that much more relatable to like a whole nother group of people. And so I think that like, even though my injury, like I do feel like sometimes it holds me back, it also is giving me like a whole nother layer of myself that I can now relate to like a whole separate group of people and have relationships with people who maybe I wouldn't have had before. You can either use like what happened to you as woe is me, or you can use it as what does this give me? There's something to be said about like going through something really hard and getting through it, and knowing like when something hard comes in the future, like, hey, like I got through all of those things and I didn't think I could, and I did. I know that I'm even more of like a fighter than I thought I was.
I love that. I don't know if this question's going to make sense, but I'm going to try. And I'm sure you've had moments like this before. Like Dave and I have been on this thing right now where we've been saying, I'll know I made it when, and then we fill in the blank, right? Like, and it's usually silly things like, I'll know I made it when I get a black stone outside on my home patio making
Yes.
crab legs on the grill.
Yes.
Things like that. But I guess in regards to where you're excited to envision yourself next, like with your injury or with your life or with whatever, and that can be sooner, like 1 year down the road, or it could be 10 years down the road. Like we don't have to define it, but what is that thing that you're going to be like, I know I made it when blank?
I think for me, like the ultimate goal is like, I know I made it when my injury no longer defines me or affects me on a daily level. My goal is to like emulate the same life I had before, in the sense of working full time, going to the gym full time, being a present, at the time fiance, soon to be wife, being a present friend, being a present daughter. Like I think a more like immediate goal is going to be like, I know I've made it when like I can balance work and home life and physical. I'll feel really good about it then. Right now I'm kind of at the point where like I feel like I kind of have the home life like figured out, and I'm had the fitness part kind of figured out, but it's the working part, adding one more layer in, or one more component to my life, that is going to be tricky. And I know I'm going to have to start part-time, and then I'm going to have to work to full-time, and then I think that that's the next kind of like semi-immediate goal. I'm not very good at recognizing it, but I think my family is, and they sometimes will bring me back to like, I just am like, oh, I'm still recovering, or oh, I'm still this, or I'm not where I want to be. But like, they're like, hey, like, you used to need a break after an hour. Now you only need a break after 4 hours, or, you used to, need to sleep for 12 hours and now you only sleep for 8. So like, they're very good about pointing out to me like these small changes that I'm not aware of, because I'm just so focused on like the big picture and the very end. In a way, like every small change that I make is all a part of like, I know I've made it when.
Absolutely. I think that's great because it's true. It's like when you're thinking of goals, it is very easy to zoom into that and be like, contrast yourself to that, like how far I have to go and what all of the little baby steps it's going to take to get there. And like feeling like it's up on top of the mountain and now you've got a long hike ahead of you. But then we forget, like, every day we're making progress, right? It's like my mom always says, little by little, one goes far. And we can take that for granted sometimes. So I'm glad you have your family there to remind you of just how much progress you have made. My last question for you is, what have you learned about patience this year? And what does patience mean to you now?
Patience is like a very hard word for me. If you asked Zach, my fiance, he would say like, that word is not in your vocabulary. Like, I don't like to be patient. I don't like to give myself grace. I want to be able to do things when I do them. I want them how I want them when I want them. I'm very like selfish in that regard. And I want it now. I mean, the two like words that I've really had to like focus on this year, but also in the recovery as a whole, is just like patience and grace. Being patient and trusting, like, I'm gonna get there. It's gonna take time, but I'm gonna get there. And just reminding myself, look how far you've come, instead of saying, look how far you have to go. Remember, where you were when you were in the hospital bed and you were wishing for, oh, I want to drive. And then I finally am now driving, or, I want to go to the gym. And I'm back to going to the gym. And like all those things did take patience, but I finally got there. So just reminding myself that, and then just having grace to be like, you had 2 brain surgeries, like you almost died. And I have to like really give myself grace and be like, oh, like, yeah, I definitely have not perfected patience or grace by any means, but I'm working on it. And I think that the more I intertwine those things, the better it is. But it's hard because we live in a society where like you usually instant gratification, you usually can get whatever you want right away. And so, yeah, it's very hard words for me to like bring into my vocabulary and bring into my daily life, but it's very, very, very important. And I try to remind myself, how would I react to somebody else if they were, in the same situation as me and they were like beating themselves up? Like, of course I would be giving them grace. Of course I'd be giving them patience. Of course I'd be lifting them up. So like, I need to remember to also do that for like myself.
Absolutely. It's probably one of the biggest lessons we can learn in our life, right? Is to actually treat ourselves the way that we treat other people, and not just like on a base level, but like, how do you treat the best people that you love the most in your life? Can you extend all of those same amazing virtues that you show other people also to yourself and mean it?
Yeah. And it's hard. And to kind of touch a little bit on the patience thing, I think for me, like one of the biggest moments that I can remember in my whole accident and recovery process was I was sitting in the hospital at Craig Rehab Center, which is an amazing facility. But I was sitting there just very like upset and wanting to brush over the injury and kind of wanting to like, I'm fine. I'm going to go back to work like next month and I'll be fine. And like, kind of not really accepting what happened to me. And like a doctor say to me, like, there are very few moments in your life where people are not going to judge you for taking a pause. This is one of those moments. And I feel like hearing those words from him, like my body like just did a whole like exhale, like I finally had permission, not that anybody made me feel a certain way, but like I finally had permission to be like, nobody is expecting you to do anything in this moment except just show up every day and do your best you can do. And I don't think I really accepted what happened to me, or accepted how big this injury was and how much of a long road I had, until I heard him say, like, just take a pause. Like, no one is expecting anything else from you. You're the only one holding yourself to these expectations. Like, and it was in that moment when like a stranger, basically, I mean, I had known him for like a week or so, but like basically a stranger had said like, hey, like we all see you. Your only job is to recover. That's it. And so I think until somebody like painted that out to me very clearly, I was kind of in like denial of the whole thing and just thinking it was like not a big deal and I could just oh, just zoom by, no big deal. Like just thinking this would be like a little blip. It was like at that moment that I really realized like how far of a journey I had to go. But also knowing that like on that journey, like no one was expecting anything from me.
Wow. I feel like the way that you described it was like, that was like the moment that kind of unlocked what was about to uncover for you over the next year ahead. It was like, you needed that key to be like,
Yep.
that life that you're talking about right now, that version of all of those beliefs about how you need to operate, how you need to function in society, those don't apply anymore. Like the game has changed.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, so many times in society, like there's a coach at Orange Theory that always talks about how like we judge people's value on what they can produce. And in the sense of like, money or a job or like a house or cars. But like he talks about how like he finds values in people of what they can like contribute to the world. I was like, I can't produce anything. I can't give anything. I can't show up at work. I can't show up in the gym. I can't show up as a wife or a fiance. I can't show up as a daughter. Like, but then like when I heard him say that, I'm like, I still like, I can give kindness. I can give energy. I can give comfort. I can give these things that are not tangible items or not like what society expects me to give. And I think that that's really important. It's hard to not like be valued on like what you can contribute. But I think it's really important to realize that like you can give so much by just being yourself and just being a good human being and just being a kind person. And I think that that was something that I really had to like realize. I still matter. I still am contributing to the world. I'm still here for a reason, even if I'm not able to produce these things I was beforehand.
On a bigger level, I think the more that you actually have recovered and the longer you're able to go and the more aware you are and the more that you've just lived it, right? Like experiencing it and actually going through it is the biggest teacher. Like you couldn't have been where you are now a year ago. You didn't have the days on the job, so to speak. But
No.
Now here you are being able to give all of us an education towards if somebody we know goes through something similar, or if we go through something similar, or how to be supportive, how to have awareness, how to hold space for somebody who's gone through something that's been traumatic. So I'm so grateful for what you've contributed to me and for all of the listeners who have been able to hear just a small part of your story.
Absolutely. Yeah. I know my mom always said when I was a kid, and even now, like we always say, like, when you know better, you do better. And with my injury and with my accident, like I now know better. So like I can do better. I want to help others like know better so they can do better. Yeah. Just like I would hope that in a different situation that I'm not well versed in, somebody can help me know better so I can do better. I don't want this injury or this accident or this experience to go like silent. I don't want it to be all for naught. I don't think this happened just because like the universe was bored or God was bored. I don't think that was the case. I think that like it was very intentional. I don't know what those intentions were, but I think like there was a reason I went through this. There was a reason that I survived. There's a reason that I'm still here to tell this story. And I don't know what that reasoning is yet, but I know that there's something. And I just think that if I just went radio silence about what happened to me or my injury or my accident, my experience, like something that happened to me that was so bad, like I want to try to find the good in it, or I want to try to find like the positive in it. I just think there's more. I think there's more to it, and I'm not sure what that is or what that looks like, but I'm like on the journey to find out what that is and go from there, I guess.
Absolutely. I think it mattered, right? Like it mattered. And every day that you show up and you show up for yourself, you show up for your fiance, you show up for your family, you show up to the gym, you show up for your recovery, you're proving that it mattered. And I know that I compliment you for that and I admire you for it. Well, gosh, Kyli, thank you so much for sharing with us today. So at the end of every episode, I usually do a card drawing, and I was hoping that you would stay present with me while we draw a card and kind of see what card we get.
Yes,
Sound
absolutely.
good? Okay, so this is from a deck called Super Attractor by Gabrielle Bernstein. So I'm just going to shuffle until a card kind of comes out. Okay, I know that this is so funny. So I got 2 cards here. And the card that I pulled, it's literally been like chasing me since about 2 weeks ago. I pulled it 2 weeks ago, and I've pulled it almost every single day that I've drawn a card. So I know this one is for me. This one is, and maybe it's for you too, but I think this is definitely your card. Mine says, feeling good will bring me far more than whatever I thought I needed. And yes. I definitely think that applies to this conversation for sure. This one, you can see it's super pretty. It says, believing in spiritual guidance gives me certainty and the freedom to keep dreaming, even when I can't yet see the result.
Yep.
Wow. What does that mean to you?
Trusting the process, trusting myself, trusting my family, trusting the support system, and knowing that like, I don't know how I'm going to get there. I don't know what the end goal is or what the finish line is, but like, I know I'm going to make it.
Absolutely. And that you can keep dreaming, right? Like you don't have to have it figured out yet. Like you can keep dreaming of whatever life holds for you, whatever you want it to be. That's exactly. Still up in the air.
Yep.
In a good way.
Yes, definitely. Definitely. I think, I read a quote the other day that I think is very fitting in my life, especially right now, as I kind of go through these kind of like unknown times, is like, what's meant for you won't pass you. I don't know what it is. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that like, I think whatever is meant to be will be, and we'll just, I guess, take it as it comes. Yep, exactly.
Oh my gosh. Well, Kyli, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate everything that you have contributed. Any last words, any final things that you want to share with everyone?
Overall, like I just want to come away with gratitude and being so thankful for everyone that's like stood by me through this whole thing. I've had just so many people who have just been such unwavering support.
Yeah.
And I am just very thankful that I had all these people in my corner to go through it with me. It's very humbling to see the support and the love and the generosity. And I think it just, it makes me feel like I must have done something right in my life to have these kinds of people going through this with me.
If you would like to continue to watch Kyli's story unfold, you can check her out on Instagram at KyHop12. That's at KYHOP12. I'm so grateful to have had a moment to connect with Kyli today and to have such an important conversation about healing and recovery. If you loved today's episode, please be sure to subscribe to the A Bit From Within podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Our website, abitfromwithin.com, is an amazing hub for self-care, support, and encouragement, offering guided meditations, gentle yoga classes, and thoughtful blogs, as well as many more ways to connect. Thank you again for tuning in today, and until next time.